It's a great day to be here with you, and this is Planet Earth. Thanks for welcoming us into your day. I'm Jay.
And I'm Keats, and welcome to episode 6 of This is Planet Earth, finding an Earth cache step by step. I recently used everything we've learned to date and found a great Earth cache, so let's learn about my experience.
Fantastic. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, everything that we've learned from our great guests and that you and I have researched and shared in the previous episodes, we're going to see if it works now, Keats. Keats,
Yes,
we, we learned a lot, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, no, we really we've gained so much Earth cache knowledge throughout just these few episodes. It's been fantastic. I mean, that interview with Matt, just excellent.
Yeah,
Um, eye opening
it
Earth
was.
cache
And Cache
knowledge.
Canada had a really practical, from their day-to-day experience, what they did. So yeah, some great stuff that's led up to this.
Absolutely.
So today, Keats, you're going to tell us about what Earth cache is it we're going to talk about.
Well, so this weekend, and I guess a while back, at this point, I did a Earth cache in North Vancouver, and it talked a lot about feldspar. And so it's a type of rock, and I guess one of the reasons why I went for this particular Earth cache is that it was pretty close to home. There have already been a lot of Earth caches that I've done on the Lower Mainland, and I kind of wanted to be able to do a brand new Earth cache, and so this Earth cache is super accessible. When I arrived at Ground Zero, very flat. Very flat terrain. You could basically do this Earth cache in a wheelchair, and right on Esplanade Street in North Vancouver. And so what this Earth cache basically talked about was this type of rock, and yeah, it had a really good description on the cache page, and of course before I went, I made sure to check the description to see, what stuff I needed to figure out, what stuff I needed to know before I arrived at Ground Zero.
Great.
And so basically, it when I read the description, I was like, okay, this is a pretty simple Earth cache, so I'll be able to show up and know what to do. A lot of it had to do with observations, and just a lot of kind of tended, like estimations of the size of certain things.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, it was an all pretty good experience, I'd say.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. And it is a fairly new Earth cache. It's by Geotech. So shout out to Geotech,
Yep.
great Earth cache creator here in our neighborhood. And as you said, I'm noting that on the screen here that the terrain is a terrain one, and you've already said, yeah, absolutely, you could do it from a wheelchair. So it does have on the attributes here. We can see that we've got 24/7 access. We've got it's a park and grab, so it's intended to be easy. You can bike to it, and it's wheelchair accessible. So he's got all the attributes that you need to know in there, which obviously you checked before you went, and we see it's a low difficulty, a D2, and a T1. Um, and so yeah, so we've got the coordinates in there. Obviously, you looked at the coordinates or at the map to figure out where you were going,
Yep.
and it seems the description is talking about feldspar, which is a very common mineral that granite and granodiorite is made of. But Keats, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you did before you left the house in
Yeah.
preparation?
Well, I left the house and I took public transit because Vancouver has a great accessible public transit system. I took the C bus across from Vancouver, from downtown, and I basically walked up, and I was geocaching with Zeppelin 94, and so we walked up to this Earth cache, right from the C bus terminal in Lonsdale, at Lonsdale Quay. and we basically just, we saw the rocks, and actually at these rocks there's this big anchor, and I made sure to mention it in my log that that this is a very well anchored earth cache, folks. Yeah, like what we basically did was we immediately kind of made our initial observations, like, okay, what are the size of these rocks at ground zero, um, noting the different kind of crystals that are inside, and in feldspar, a lot of the crystals you see are quartz, so the more glassy spots, in feldspar, and some of the biotite, some of the black spots are biotite mica, and so that was kind of neat to see some of the specifics mentioned in the earth cache description. And another really cool fact that we learned about feldspar, is that it is commonly used in ceramics and glass. And I should have probably known this by now. I think I have done a feldspar earth cache before, but it was really cool, kind of figuring out that this particular rock can be made into any type of thing that we can use, as earthlings. So it was really cool, and also one of the largest mines, for feldspar. Fun fact, is in North Dakota. So shout out to any North Dakotans listening to this podcast. You have one of the largest mine, but unfortunately it was closed. There was just so many cool things that we learned about this particular
So
earth
lots of
cache.
Yeah, sorry. So lots of interesting facts in the write-up. So you were quite well informed and prepared, and honestly, we've shown, as you were speaking, we've shown some of the write-up on the screen here, and as folks could see, it's not a long write-up, but packed with great information and very accessible. So all this wonderful information that Keats learned before he even headed out to Ground Zero, very well prepared and placed in there. So again, a great example of how to simply deliver the information for an earth cache in a way that's very informative. So Keats, you were all prepped, you got on the C bus and you made your way over there. When you first got to ground zero, walk me through the experience of, having read about this, having all this information about feldspar and mica and what was in your head, and then you finally arrived at ground zero. What was the experience like then?
Well, it was a very, like, there it is, behold. Actually, it's funny, when we approached it, because we didn't really quite know at the time what feldspar particularly looked like. Zeppelin 94 pointed at what looked like it was a conglomerate looking wall, and we eventually figured out that was the concrete. That was not part of the earth cache, but we were briefly fascinated by this concrete wall of rock that was like it was sliced, and you can see all the rocks inside the concrete. So we thought, oh, this is kind of a neat little conglomerate. But we eventually looked over and we saw, well, there's the anchor, and there are the rocks. And in the description, it mentions a particular spot on the rock that you're supposed to measure. And so what ended up happening was we were like, okay, yeah, this is definitely the spot, and that's kind of how we figured it out. And with that, when we sent our messages to Geotech, we kind of we gave him those measurements, and we got the okay, so that was good.
Okay, so
And
hold on
yeah,
I'm curious because
yeah,
in previous discussions with other folks, we've talked about whether you and Zeppelin went to the cache together, but you each separately sent your answers, or did you send the answers for both of you guys?
we separately sent the answers. Yeah. I mean, since we both worked on them at the same time, we just wanted to make sure that both got our answers, just to make sure that, just to kind of reinforce that we were both there. And we also took some photos of ground zero to show that we were there.
Right on. Okay, very cool. Thank you. So you
Yeah.
showed up. You initially were hypnotized by a fascinating rock wall that turned out to not actually be the Earth cache. You quickly realized where the Earth cache itself was. Um, Started to make some observations there. But it sounds like it was fairly an impactful experience when you arrived. You were able to, because as you said before, you weren't sure what what the feldspar itself would look like, and so when you got to the anchor and the correct location, was there kind of an aha moment of like, oh my goodness, I totally see what we're talking about? How did that go?
Yeah, there was definitely an aha moment because a lot of geotech's earth caches are like they take you to a spot that is maybe like a sculpture. I know that just down the way from that particular earth cache, there's another one that is basically a sculpture, and it's made of a certain type of rock. And so he made an earth cache out of that. Just up Lonsdale, there is another earth cache outside of Blue Shore. I think it's Blue Shore Credit Union, and you go there, and it's right there. It's so what's really cool about geotech's earth caches is that they are so accessible, and he makes you see the world around you in a more geological sense. And that, I think, is what is really awesome about his earth caches, and also um, his very simple to understand questions. Um, when I'm doing earth caches, I expect to know, how to answer these questions. And so for his questions, they're very simple, they're very to the point. And the other thing that I like, because sometimes I'm not entirely details oriented 100% of the time. So when I read a question, I and I say, oh, and it says estimate the size of this. I can say, oh yeah, okay, sure, it's maybe 1 foot by 3 feet or whatever in diameter, and I can show, I can kind of show the cache owner that I've been there, and that the cache owner doesn't need to be like, yeah, actually, technically that was, this size, like technically this how many meters this particular rock is. You had to make sure you had a meter, like you had to bring a meter stick or whatnot. And some earth cache owners do require that. And that's all part of reading the description before you go. But in this particular case, at the feldspar with cache, we didn't have to worry about that. We just kind of did an estimation of the rock.
Right. Okay. And without, again, we'll be careful not to give any information away and spoil another great geotech earth cache. But you've talked a little bit about that. Let's talk about the logging tasks and the observations that you guys made when you got there. So, in general, did you find it? And maybe you've already talked about this a little bit, but let's dig into it a little bit more. Was it fairly straightforward or clear when you got there as to, once you got to the right spot, um, what the observations yeah, yeah, I was poking fun at you. What the what the observations were supposed to be, and so that you could be really clear on the logging tasks, or did you struggle a little bit with that?
Once we read the questions, we were like, yeah, yeah, this is the correct spot to be in. And what was really good is that when you read the description, you can also understand a bit further of what that question is asking. So when we were there, we it talks about plagioclase, as well as orthoclase, and so it went into further detail about that type, that particular geological feature. And so we were able to answer the question uh, in a more confident sense. So we didn't have to kind of research what plagioclase was or orthoclase. And I think that's what's awesome about EarthCache descriptions, is that most of them uh, are really clear and go into detail about those particular geological terms. And so as a result, you end up learning so much about a geological feature just by finding an earth cache. You don't need to pull out a textbook necessarily. Just basic kind of, here's what this is, and answer the question according to what you see at ground zero. And that, I think, is one of the biggest factors when finding an earth cache, is knowing what you are talking about based on what you have also read in the description.
Awesome. So Keats, you guys, when you went there, you shot a little bit of video,
Mhm.
as I understand it, so you could kind of share the experience without any spoilers in it, but just to kind of share the experience a little bit. So maybe we'll cut to that, if you don't mind. So we'll share some of that video now, and then we'll pick up the conversation in just a moment.
For sure. Hey, Earth Cache lovers, this is Keats 94 here with Zeppelin 94. We are right now doing an Earth Cache in North Vancouver, British Columbia. Right over here we have an anchor that's not part of the Earth Cache. What we're actually really looking at are these rocks down here. This particular Earth Cache is by Geotech, so shout out to him. He makes a lot of very accessible Earth Caches, so it's very much appreciated. Thank you, Geotech, for what you do. Right now we're obtaining data. We're obtaining the answers for the Earth Cache so that we're going to send it to Geotech. And it's a nice Earth Cache, very accessible. This talks about feldspar, which is a type of rock. We're not going to give away the answers, but another great spot to visit when you're out in North Vancouver. Check out the cool purple. I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but there's some really cool purple spots on this thing. I don't know if that's a mineral or or spray paint, but very cool.
Well, that was very cool. Keats, thank you very much for shooting that video while you guys were on site. It looks like you had fun.
It was fun. It was awesome.
That's awesome. So we talked about the logging tasks and you gathered your information. Did you send the answers right away while you were at ground zero, or did you wait till you got home?
Actually, I logged them when I was on the bus. So that worked out really easily. It was just read the description, read the questions, and then it was able to say, yeah, here, I basically copy and pasted the notes from what I got from the Earth Cache and said, okay, hey, Geotech, we did your Earth Cache we did your feldspar Earth Cache. Here are the answers. And then I said this, and then I always made sure to thank him for putting it there. And then, I just sent the questions and I got the okay from Geotech, and it was awesome. And what's awesome about Geotech is he also gets back to you and says, yes, great. Or, go back and do, or, this is what this question was meant to talk about or whatnot. But in this case, I got the okay from Geotech, and it's always nice to get validated after you've done work on a Earth Cache.
Yeah, he is really good at getting back to let you know that your answers are, acceptable, and that's something that's encouraged for Earth Cache owners. And Geotech owns a lot of Earth Caches, and he still makes sure that he responds in a timely manner to everybody. So again, 2 thumbs up for Geotech. A great example of an Earth Cache owner. So you had sent the answers in on the bus on your way home. So the answers sent. It was obviously then time to log your find. And as we kind of wrap up this particular adventure, do you have any last thoughts on this Earth Cache and your experience of using everything we've learned to date to go and find another Earth Cache?
I mean, a lot of the things that I can say is just go up to North Vancouver and do a bunch of Geotech Earth Caches, because he has some fantastic, easy to understand Earth Caches. And I think it really, as at the time when I was a new geocacher, it really inspired me to find more Earth Caches when I was able to read a description that was clear and understandable, and the questions were understandable too. So with that, I was able to go out into the wild blue yonder and find more Earth Caches by different cache owners, and it really got me seeing seeing the Earth in a bigger picture, geologically at least. And actually, funnily enough, on that same day, Zeppelin 94 and I, we actually went further up into North Vancouver, Inland Valley, and we did GC8 NEAT on that day, and that was find number 13,000. So it was a pretty memorable day. And so with doing the EarthCache, we also cleaned up the environment, and so that was a really it felt good that day. We were giving back to a small ravine in North Vancouver, and also learning about the Earth as well. So yeah, it was a fantastic day.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on your 13,000th find. Sorry, it was 13. Is that the number?
13,000. Yep.
There we go. All right. Well, congratulations on that. And so it's time to wrap things up for this episode. It's been a lot of fun learning through Keats and his experience. Hopefully you guys are able to learn from us as we learn together and have a lot of fun finding Earth caches. So we want to remind you, good listeners, to share your thoughts with us on social media about this episode and any questions or thoughts that you have on Earth caches, and check out our new Facebook community. Come and check that out. Join us, ask your questions, find lots of great content there. We're waiting for you. Keats and I are both waiting for you there.
Yes, Jay. And remember, listeners, we want you to come with us on this journey of discovery. So send us your questions, ideas, and feedback through our social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at This Is Planet RTH, or our home on the web, landmonkey.ca/Planet Earth.
That's right. And of course, This Is Planet Earth is a Wander Network production hosted by LANMonkey.ca and produced by Jay Kennedy and Keats Morton. Join us every 2 weeks for new content and send us your feedback. This music is Hear the Noise by John Deley and the 41 Players, CC Copyright Fair Use. This podcast content is copyright Creative Commons 3.0 2021 by J. Kennedy. Now, folks, get out there and have another awesome spin around on our planet Earth.